Welcome back. Now that you've got a good understanding about how to query a CSV file using the Serverless SQL Pool, I would like you to put those learnings and query under the file, which is a calendar.csv file. And this is very similar to the taxizone.csv file. Let me show you the file first. And as you can see, it's again a comma-separated file with a header, and it's got bits of information about every day. So there's one record every day of the year, and it got the date in the date format, and you've got the years, months, and things like that separated out. And I would say you've got the day of the week in the month in words and things like that. These things will be quite handy when you come to join your trip data to this file and then report on that. So you will be able to report trip statistics for a weekend compared to weekday. For example, actually you want to compare a Saturday with a Sunday. And you can do all of those kind of things actually having this file in place because we've queried similar file previously. I would like you to take this as an assignment and then try and look at the data yourself. Before you start, I want to give you a couple of pointers. We know that by using the user interface here, we can create the select statement, but I would like you to create it by hand so that you understand each of the options you're specifying for the open row set and everything registers in your mind. So try and do that as a new SQL script and write it by hand yourself, and also try and provide the with clause if you're only querying a file once. Actually, there is no need to provide with class, but if we are doing it multiple times, as we said, actually things like performance and cost could be impacted. So it's better to know how to specify a with clause with all the data types in the column, names, and things like that. And that would be sufficient. But if you want to take it further, you can just remove the header and try and specify the ordinal position to pick the columns and specify your own column names and things like that. So try and do as much as possible using the learnings we've done so far. And if you get stuck, then come back to the video and I'll show you what I have done. I'm only just going to show you how to select the data and how to specify the column names and things like that. But it'll be up to you to explore further. Hope you've managed to complete the assignment. I'll show you how I would go about exploring the calendar data. So we're in the Data tab, so let's switch to the Develop tab because we want to start our own new SQL script, and under Discovery what we want to keep the file. So let's click on New Script, and then I'm going to call this one as to_explorer calendar. Whenever you write a SQL script, you want to ensure that you are connected to the right SQL pool and also you're using the right database. In this case, we are connected to the built-in serverless pool, which is what we want, but we are connected to the master database. We don't want to be in master database. We want to be using the NYC Taxi Discovery database because that's where we defined our external data sources and things like that. So that's what we want to switch to. We can't switch here, but the safest thing is to put that in your SQL script. So whoever is running it all will always switch to that database before they execute the SQL statements. So let's do that. So if I run this one, it's going to immediately switch to that database, and it's done that here, and now we can write our select statement. So we want to do a select star from we want to use the open row set function as we discussed previously. And we want to give the options to the open row set function using the bulk provider. So to the provider you want to specify the name of the file. In our case, it is the calendar.csv, it's the file name, and you put a comma, and then you want to specify the data source. So we created the data source in the last session and that we called it as NYC Taxi Data_raw. And now we want to specify the format of the file. In this case, we know that the format of the file CSV, and as we discussed previously, we need to specify the parser version. So we got the two possible since we talked about 1.0 and 2.0. 2.0 is the most performant one. So we are going to go for that. And the last thing we want to do is to specify whether we have a header. In our case, we do know that we have a header, so we've given all the options and the only thing left is to alias the open row set, and I'm going to call this as called for calendar. And by running this script, we are going to get the results, I hope. So now we've got all the data being output here. I'm going to just get rid of the properties and many more and push this tab to the left. So we've got a bit more space here. As you can see, we are seeing the data as expected, but things like data types, we don't really know. Let's look at the messages, and there are no warnings here. Usually if you have a string and if you haven't defined it as UTF-8, you're going to get a warning there. But because we've set the UTF-8 collation at the database level, we're not seeing that warning either. And things like data types, I think actually define the data to type for this field. But the others, some of them could be big N's, and these strings could be defined as about varchar 8000 as we've seen previously. Let us run this stored procedure to get the data types anyway, and we'll have a look at that. And let me copy and paste the select statement into that. And also, as we said previously, let's escape single quotes as well. And let's run this statement now, and that should tell us the data types. So I can see that key is being defined as big int and the date is a date and the other are begins here. And then all the character fields of the string fields have been defined as varchar 8000. So that seems a bit excessive for things like day name and month name and things like that. So we'll fix that using the with clause. As I said before, if you're just running or if you're just analyzing the data once, don't worry about defining with clauses. But if you are going to run a query over and over again, specify with clauses because that's going to be more performant as well as it's going to cost you less. So the other factor you need to consider is how big the file is. In this case, it's a very small file, so it's not going to make any difference. But when you are in real projects, you're going to have massive files. So you want to define with clauses in those circumstances. So I've got it with clauses already prepared so that I can copy and paste it here, and let me show you and walk you through what it is. So I've defined the date key as integer, date as date in things like year, month, or very small integer. So I've got a combination of small int and tiny int, and their names and month names are defined as varchar 10. So you might be wondering when to use the integer and when to use small and tiny and big int. And you will do that based on the size of your numbers. Are the integers being stored? So there is a page here on Microsoft documentation. Again, a link on the course materials. So tiny in 1 byte it goes from 0 to 5, 5 small int is 2 bytes. It goes from -3, 27, and 68 to 32767. And you can see the size is 4 int. Big int, they are 4 bytes and 8 bytes. So use the appropriate sizes so that you can save on performance as well as cost. Let's switch back to the quote here, and if I run this query now, it should still give us the same results, but this time it will be using the data types we've defined. So that's everything I have done. But if you want to play with things like ordinal columns and renaming columns and things like that, just remove the that equals true and then just say first row is number 2, so it'll skip the header. And then you can just use the ordinal positions to get whatever you want. For example, if you wanted to pick only a few columns, just get rid of the others, but specify the position of each one of them as well. So that's the end of this session, and I'll see you in the next one.